The sky above Stormwind tore open like a wound in reality itself. Citizens in the trade district looked up from their haggling as violet and black energy crackled across the heavens, forming a swirling vortex that seemed to drink in the afternoon light. The city bells began their urgent tolling. Guards rushed to their posts along the massive stone walls. In the throne room of Stormwind Keep, King Anduin rose from his seat, his hand instinctively moving to Charlemagne at his side. "What manner of sorcery is this?" demanded Gen Greymane, the grizzled king of Gilneas, his eyes already reflecting the amber glow of his Worgen curse threatening to surface. Around them, the high command of the Alliance mobilized with practiced efficiency. Mages of the Kirin Tor began weaving counterspells. Priests of the cathedral channeled protective barriers over the city's populated districts. And still the anomaly grew, its edges crackling with energy that made even experienced arcanists uneasy. From that impossible tear between dimensions, something fell. Not debris, not a creature of the void or the twisting nether, but a figure, dark as midnight, Kate billowing behind, despite the absence of wind, descending with deliberate control toward the city below. The shape resolved as it slowed its descent, revealing itself to be humanoid, clad in armor of gray and black, with pointed ears rising from a cowled helm and a symbol emblazoned across the chest that resembled no heraldry known to Azeroth. A stylized bat, wings spread in silhouette. The figure landed in the champion's hall with impossible grace, boots touching marble without sound despite the height of the fall. Guards surrounded the intruder immediately, weapons drawn, but none attacked. There was something in the figure's posture that suggested both readiness and restraint. Not a threat, but absolutely dangerous. "Identify yourself, intruder," commanded Commander Marcus, a veteran of campaigns from Northrend to Pandaria. "By what authority do you enter the sovereign territory of the Alliance?" The cowled figure stood slowly, scanning the assembled guards with eyes hidden behind white lenses in his mask. When he spoke, his voice was deep, controlled, carrying an authority that made even hardened soldiers hesitate. "I am Batman. I don't know how I arrived here, but I mean you no harm. I need information. Where am I?" Before anyone could respond, the bells changed their cadence. Not the alarm for magical intrusion, but the deeper, more ominous toll that signaled invasion. A guard burst into the hall, his face pale. "Commander, the Burning Legion, a demonic assault force has breached the city's outer defenses. They came through the same rift as..." He gestured toward Batman, uncertainty in his voice. Batman's cowl turned toward the sound of distant explosions now audible even within the keep's thick walls. "Demons, you're under attack." It wasn't a question. He moved toward the entrance with purpose. "Wait!" Anduin's voice rang out as the young king entered the hall, surrounded by his personal guard. "If you came through that portal, you may have led them here. What are you?" Batman stopped, regarding the young man who carried himself with the bearing of someone far older than his years. "I'm someone who stops threats. Right now, your city is being invaded. We can discuss what I am after your people are safe." Without waiting for permission, he was gone, moving with a speed that shocked the assembled soldiers. They heard the distant sound of screams from the direction he'd headed. In the trade district, chaos had erupted. Fell guards, massive demons wielding weapons wreathed in green flame, had materialized in the streets. Doom guards swooped from the sky, their wings blotting out the sun as they hurled shadow bolts into fleeing crowds. Imps cackled as they set merchant stalls ablaze with fiel fire. The city guard fought valiantly, but they were overwhelmed, their formations breaking under the demonic assault. Batman emerged from a side street, his tactical mind already analyzing the battlefield. 17 major hostiles visible, likely more in surrounding areas. Civilians trapped between demonic forces and blocked escape routes. Guard forces disorganized, fighting individual battles rather than coordinated defense. He had seen chaos before in Gotham, but never quite like this. These weren't criminals or even metahuman threats. These were literal demons, creatures that shouldn't exist outside mythology and magic he had always relied on technology to counter. He reached into his utility belt, fingers finding familiar shapes even in this unfamiliar world. A batarang flew through the air with perfect accuracy, striking an imp that had been about to immolate a family of gnomes cowering behind an overturned cart. The creature shrieked and dissipated into ash. Batman noted this with interest. They could be destroyed, which meant they could be fought. A fell guard turned its massive horned head toward him, eyes burning with field corruption. It charged, bringing its blade down in an overhead strike that would have cleaved a man in two. Batman wasn't there. He rolled under the swing, coming up inside the demon's guard, and drove his armored fist into what he calculated was its center of mass. The impact would have shattered concrete. The Felguard staggered but didn't fall. Stronger than anticipated, more durable than human physiology. He adjusted his strategy. The Felguard swung again. Batman caught the blade between reinforced gauntlets, the metal of his armor screaming under the strain but holding. With a twist, he redirected the demon's momentum, using its own strength against it, sending it crashing into two more Felguards that had been advancing on a group of guards. Before they could recover, he had already thrown 3 batarangs in quick succession. Each found a target, and each demon burst into ash and fell fire as the weapon struck what he was beginning to identify as their weak points. "Form up on him!" Commander Marcus had arrived with reinforcements, quickly recognizing that this mysterious stranger was turning the tide of the battle. The guards rallied, their formation tightening around Batman's position as he methodically dismantled the demonic assault. He moved like nothing they had ever witnessed, every motion efficient, every strike calculated. He wasted no energy, no movement. When a Doom Guard dove from above, talons extended, Batman's cape suddenly stiffened and spread, catching the demon mid-flight. Some kind of weighted edges in the fabric allowed him to redirect its trajectory, slamming it into the cobblestones where waiting guards finished it with blessed steel. Within minutes, the immediate threat was neutralized, but Batman's expression behind his cowl remained grim. This was a probe, not a full assault. Whoever commanded these forces was testing the defenses, gathering intelligence. He had seen this pattern countless times in Gotham. Crime lords testing GCPD response times before a major operation. This was the same principle on a larger scale. "The portal," he said to Commander Marcus. "It's still open. They'll send more." As if to confirm his words, the rift in the sky pulsed with renewed energy. But this time, something different emerged. A massive warship, its hull twisted and wrong, covered in spikes and chains, wreathed in green flame. Demonic runes glowed along its surface. On its deck, Batman could see ranks of demons assembling, far more organized than the chaotic assault force that had just attacked. Anduin had emerged from the keep, accompanied by his advisors and several powerful mages. Jaina Proudmoore, Lord Admiral of Kultiras, and one of the most powerful sorceresses on Azeroth, stepped forward, her hands already weaving complex patterns of frost and arcane energy. "A Legion dreadnaught," she identified grimly. "That ship carries enough demons to overrun the city if they all deploy at once. Then we destroy it before they can deploy," Batman stated simply, his tone suggesting this was obvious. "How?" Gin Greymane growled, his patience with the mysterious stranger wearing thin. "That vessel is warded against magical assault. It would take our entire fleet to bring it down, and we don't have time to mobilize them." Batman's eyes, hidden behind the white lenses of his cowl, studied the ship's structure. He was identifying stress points, likely power sources, the patterns of the wards that Jaina had mentioned. "Magic isn't the only way to destroy something. Do you have explosives?" "We have demolition charges," Marcus replied, "used for mining and siege work. But how do you propose we get them aboard that ship?" Batman looked up at the swirling portal, calculating vectors, wind resistance, the weight he could carry with his grappling systems. I'll need 10 of your most powerful charges, and I'll need them in the next 3 minutes." What followed was a display that would become legend in the taverns of Stormwind for years to come. Batman assembled the charges with practiced efficiency, his hands moving with the certainty of someone who had built and dismantled countless explosives. He attached them to a harness of his own design, fashioned from materials requisitioned from nearby guard posts and merchant stalls. The watching crowd had grown, soldiers and civilians alike drawn by the spectacle. "You cannot possibly mean to—" Jaina began, but Batman was already moving. His grappling gun fired, the line catching some impossible point in the air near the portal. He swung upward with momentum that defied normal physics, releasing at the apex and firing another line, each swing carrying him higher. The demons aboard the dreadnaught noticed him now, and felt a fire began raining down. He twisted mid-air, his cape spreading to help him bank and weave through the barrage. A fellbolt passed so close that it singed the edge of his cowl, but he didn't slow. He landed on the ship's hull with a roll, immediately moving toward what his analysis had identified as the main support structure. Demons converged on his position. He fought with brutal efficiency, every strike targeting joints, eyes, throats. When a Moarg brute charged him with its massive hammer, Batman slid under the weapon's arc, planted an explosive charge on its back, and kicked off, using the creature's own mass as a springboard to reach a higher section of the hull. The charge detonated, consuming the Moarg and 3 other demons in the blast. The ship's commander, an Eridar sorcerer whose robes crackled with Fiel energy, emerged from the command deck. "You dare defile a vessel of the Burning Legion, mortal?" Power gathered in its hands, raw destructive force that could unmake matter itself. Batman threw a batarang. The Eridar contemptuously waved it aside with a shield of magic. The batarang curved in mid-air, striking a previously placed explosive charge. The detonation caught the sorcerer completely off guard, disrupting its spell and sending it staggering. Batman was already moving, placing the final charges in a pattern calculated to cause cascading structural failure. He ran for the edge of the ship as alarms began blaring. Demons rushed to stop him, but he was faster. He dove off the side of the dreadnaught just as the charges detonated in sequence. The massive vessel shuddered, green flame erupting from internal explosions. Its wards, designed to deflect external magical assaults, did nothing against explosives placed within. The ship began to break apart, huge sections of twisted metal falling toward the city below. Jaina and the other mages acted immediately, their combined power catching the falling debris and redirecting it away from populated areas. Batman used his grappling gun to arrest his fall, swinging down to land in the champion's hall where he had first arrived. The dreadnaught's remains crashed into the harbor outside the city walls, sending up massive plumes of water and steam. Silence fell over Stormwind. Then, slowly, a cheer began. It started with the guards who had fought beside the stranger, then spread through the crowds of citizens who had witnessed his impossible feat. But Batman didn't acknowledge the celebration. He was already analyzing the situation, looking for remaining threats, assessing what had just happened. Anduin approached, awe and concern mixing on his young face. That was, "You saved the city. We owe you a great debt, Batman. But I must ask again, what are you? No ordinary mortal could do what you just did." Batman turned to face the king, and for the first time, there was something like weariness in his posture. "I'm human, just a man who has trained his body and mind to their peak and uses technology to augment my capabilities. Where I come from, I protect a city called Gotham from criminals, terrorists, and occasionally threats far worse. But I've never seen anything like this. Demons, magic. This isn't my world." "No." Jaina stepped forward, her mage senses having analyzed Batman during the battle. "You're not from Azeroth. Your arrival through that rift, it was dimensional displacement. Somehow, you've been pulled from your reality into ours. The question is whether the Legion caused this deliberately or if your arrival was coincidental to their attack. Before anyone could speculate further, a messenger arrived, his face ashen. My king, urgent report from Ironforge. The dwarves report similar rifts opening across Khaz-Modan. The Horde has sent word from Orgrimmar that they too face incursions. This isn't isolated to Stormwind. Something is happening across all of Azeroth. Batman's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. Coordinated assault, multiple fronts. They're testing defenses everywhere simultaneously. This is a prelude to something bigger. He turned to Anduin. Your world is in danger. I need to understand what you're facing. Everything. The forces threatening you, your capabilities, your resources. If I'm trapped here, I won't stand idle while people die. What followed was an intensive briefing in Stormwind Keep's war room. Maps of Azeroth spread across massive tables. Representatives from various Alliance factions gathered to share intelligence. Batman listened, absorbed, analyzed. He learned of the Burning Legion's endless crusade to unmake all worlds, of the old gods sleeping beneath Azeroth's surface, of the constant tension between Horde and Alliance. He learned of the Titans who shaped the world, of the magic that permeated everything, of threats that made Gotham's rogues gallery seem almost quaint by comparison. You fight on too many fronts, Batman observed, his detective's mind cutting through to the core problem. The Alliance and Horde war drains resources that should be used against existential threats. The Legion exploits this division. Your enemies aren't just demons and old gods. It's your own inability to unite. Gen growled at this assessment. The Horde has committed atrocities against the Alliance for generations. You cannot expect us to simply forgive. I don't expect forgiveness, Batman interrupted, his voice hard. I expect survival. I've seen cities tear themselves apart from within while external threats waited to pick up the pieces. If you don't find a way to work together, you'll all fall separately. Anduin nodded slowly, the words resonating with his own beliefs, though he had struggled to unite even his own alliance. You're right, of course, but trust isn't easily built, especially across generations of conflict. Over the following days, Batman set to work with characteristic intensity. He couldn't return to his world. Not yet, perhaps not ever. But he could do what he always did, adapt and protect. He studied Azeroth's threats with the same analytical approach he had once used to profile Gotham's criminals. The Burning Legion operated with military precision, which meant they had command structures, supply lines, and tactical patterns that could be exploited. The old gods were more insidious, working through corruption and whispers, turning enemies against each other, but even that followed psychological patterns he recognized from facing fear toxin and mind control in his own world. He began working with the SI-7, the Alliance Intelligence Network. His detective skills, honed over years of solving impossible cases, proved invaluable in uncovering Legion infiltration. He identified 3 demon-corrupted officials within Stormwind's bureaucracy that had evaded detection for months. His methods were unorthodox by Azeroth standards, relying on observation, deduction, and carefully set traps rather than magical detection. You don't trust magic, Jaina observed one evening as Batman reviewed intelligence reports in the Mage Quarter. I've noticed you rely on your technology and skills even when magical solutions would be simpler. Batman didn't look up from his work. Magic is a tool I don't fully understand. I've learned not to depend on tools I can't personally control or repair. In Gotham, I've faced magic users. The problem with magic is it can be unpredictable, corrupted, turned against you. Technology follows rules. Physics follows rules. I can work with rules. Everything follows rules here too, Jaina replied, a slight smile on her face. Magic is just physics that your world doesn't acknowledge. The arcane is governed by principles as rigid as any engineering. But I understand your caution. Magic on Azeroth can be dangerous, especially field magic and void power. We've seen too many fall to corruption. This conversation proved prescient when Batman encountered his first Old God incursion. Reports came of madness spreading through a mining village in Westfall. Miners had delved too deep and breached an ancient chamber. Now they attacked each other, gibbering in unknown tongues, their eyes weeping black ichor. Local guards were infected by mere proximity to the affected miners. Batman approached the situation as he would any chemical or biological hazard in Gotham. Full protective measures, quarantine protocols, careful study before direct engagement. He designed filters for his cowl to block airborne vectors, developed a mixture of light and sound that seemed to disrupt the Old God whispers based on research into similar phenomena reported in Pandaria and other regions. When he entered the compromised mine, he did so with scientific precision. Each infected miner was subdued non-lethally and secured. The deeper he went, the stronger the whispers became. Even through his filters, he could feel them at the edges of his consciousness. Promises of power, revelations of truth about the meaninglessness of his crusade. Visions of Gotham burning while he wasted time in this foreign world. He recognized the attack for what it was: psychological warfare. He had been trained by the best, including Lady Shiva and Ra's al Ghul, to master his mind. He had resisted Scarecrow's fear toxin, Poison Ivy's pheromones, and Mad Hatter's mind control. The Old God whispers were more alien, more fundamentally wrong than any of those, but the principle remained the same. Acknowledge the attack, compartmentalize it, focus on the objective. At the heart of the mind, he found the source. A tentacle, massive and pulsing, emerging from a crack in reality itself. It radiated wrongness that made his eyes water even through his cowl's filters. Void energy crackled around it, and within the patterns of that energy, Batman could see faces, screaming silently in eternal torment. He placed explosive charges around the chamber, mixed with holy water provided by Stormwind's priests and light-infused crystals from the Naru. He had learned to blend his technology with this world's resources. The detonation sealed the breach and severed the tentacle, which dissolved into oily smoke that his equipment samples indicated was dimensional in nature, not truly material at all. The miners recovered slowly, their minds scarred but intact. Batman delivered his report to Anduin and the Alliance leadership with characteristic thoroughness. The Old Gods are contained, but not defeated. They're probing weaknesses, looking for opportunities. Every breach needs to be responded to immediately and completely, no half measures. You speak from experience, Anduin observed. Have you faced similar entities in your world? Batman's jaw tightened behind his cowl. Different in nature, but yes. Darkseid, a godlike being who seeks to control all life through the anti-life equation. The Old God's corruption is similar, attempting to reduce thinking beings to extensions of their will. The defense is the same. Maintain your identity, refuse to give in to despair or false hope, and strike at their influence wherever it appears. As weeks passed, Batman's presence began to fundamentally affect Azeroth's conflicts. His refusal to accept the status quo between Horde and Alliance led to a series of incidents that, while controversial, could not be ignored. When he discovered intelligence about a Legion operation that threatened both factions, he shared it with both. When Horde and Alliance forces ended up fighting side by side against demons due to his intelligence, he was there, coordinating their efforts, demonstrating that cooperation was possible. The Horde's leadership took notice. War Chief Sylvanas Windrunner, the Dark Lady of the Forsaken, requested a meeting. It was held in neutral territory, Dalaran, with representatives from both factions present. Batman stood before the War Chief, the Banshee Queen whose eyes glowed with unnatural light, whose very presence spoke of death and dark magic. You meddle in affairs you don't understand, Batman, Sylvanas stated, her voice carrying the ethereal quality of the undead. The conflict between Horde and Alliance is older than you, rooted in genuine grievances and blood debts. You cannot simply decide it should end. I'm not deciding anything, Batman replied evenly. I'm showing an alternative. You're intelligent enough to see that the Legion benefits from your division. Every soldier you commit to fighting each other is one that can't fight demons. Every resource spent on your war is one not spent on defense against existential threats. Pretty words, but the Alliance has made it clear they will never accept the Horde as equals. They see us as monsters to be eliminated or contained. Some do, Batman acknowledged. Just as some in the Horde see the Alliance as soft and weak, unworthy of Azeroth. Both sides have members who profit from eternal conflict, who use external enemies to maintain internal power. I've seen it in my world. Crime families that perpetuate gang wars to maintain territory. Politicians who use fear of the other to secure votes. The pattern is universal. For the first time, something like respect flickered across Sylvanas' face. You are more than you appear, Batman. Not just a warrior, but a strategist who understands power structures. Very well. I will consider your words. But know this. The Horde will not subordinate itself to Alliance interests, no matter how reasonable your arguments. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking both sides to acknowledge that there are threats that don't care about your territorial disputes. The old gods don't distinguish between Horde and Alliance. The Legion will burn you all equally. You can hate each other after those threats are eliminated. This pragmatic approach began to show results. Joint operations against Legion forces became more common. Intelligence sharing improved. Batman became a strange sort of neutral party, trusted by neither side completely, but respected by both for his effectiveness and his unwillingness to play political games. But not everyone was pleased with these developments. Within both factions, there were those who saw Batman as a threat to their power. In the Alliance, some nobles resented an outsider influencing young King Anduin. In the Horde, warlords suspicious of any detente saw Batman's influence as weakening their military readiness. The assassination attempt came during a routine patrol of Stormwind's trade district. Batman's instincts, honed by years of expecting attacks in Gotham, saved him. He twisted as the poisoned blade struck, the razor-sharp steel scraping across his armor rather than finding flesh. His counter was immediate and brutal, disarming the assassin and pinning him against a wall in seconds. The would-be killer was a human, but the poison on his blade was not of Azeroth. Batman recognized the chemical signature from his own world. It was a derivative of Joker toxin, impossible to synthesize without specific knowledge from his dimension. Someone had brought this from his reality or had access to information about his world. The assassin died before interrogation could begin, foam bubbling from his mouth as a fail-safe poison activated. But Batman had enough. Someone knew more about him than they should. Someone was targeting him specifically, using methods from his own world. The implications were disturbing. His investigation led him into darker corners of Azeroth's underworld. He discovered a network of operatives who didn't serve Alliance, Horde, or even the Legion. They worked for an entity they referred to only as the Collector, someone who supposedly gathered knowledge and artifacts from across dimensions. Batman had encountered similar figures before. Ra's al Ghul, Vandal Savage, immortals who accumulated power and knowledge over centuries. But this collector seemed to specialize in dimensional manipulation. The trail led to Karajan, the mysterious tower that existed partially outside normal space and time. Batman approached the location with full awareness that he was walking into potential trap, but also recognizing this was the best lead on possibly returning to his own world. If this collector truly dealt in dimensional travel, they might have answers. Karajan was a place of warped reality, rooms that didn't follow normal geometry, time flowing differently in various chambers. Batman navigated it with the same methodical approach he used in Gotham's most dangerous locations. Every corner checked, every anomaly noted, constant awareness of his surroundings. He found the collector in what appeared to be a library, though the books on its shelves seemed to shift and change when not directly observed. The figure was humanoid but indistinct, as if existing in multiple states simultaneously. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The Batman, Detective, Knight, Crusader. You have many titles across many worlds. In some realities, you're a myth. In others, you're a tyrant. In yours, you were a hero. Were because you're no longer there, are you? You brought me here, Batman stated, not asking. I facilitated your passage, yes. Your arrival was not random. I have been observing your world, studying its heroes and villains, cataloging their methods and capabilities. You were chosen specifically because you represent something rare. Human achievement without supernatural enhancement, pure will and determination made manifest. Why? The collector's form shifted, becoming slightly more defined. Because Azeroth needs something it has lost. Hope grounded in mortal capability. This world has become dependent on godlike powers, on ancient artifacts, on heroes who are more than human. They have forgotten that mortals can shape their own destiny. You are my reminder to them, my experiment. Batman's fist clenched. I'm no one's experiment. Send me home. I could, but I won't. Not yet. You have already changed things here, disrupted patterns, challenged assumptions. I want to see how far that influence spreads. Besides, your Gotham still stands. Your allies there protected. Robin has proven more capable than even you believe. Your city doesn't need you as much as you thought. Perhaps this world needs you more. The collector vanished before Batman could respond, leaving only echoing laughter and a profound sense of violation. Batman was being used, manipulated, his entire presence here part of someone else's design. It was a feeling he despised more than almost any other. He returned to Stormwind in grim silence, his mind working through the implications. If he had been brought here deliberately, there might be others. Other heroes or villains from his world scattered across Azeroth. The Joker loose in a world of magic would be catastrophic. Lex Luthor with access to dimensional technology would be unstoppable. He needed to find answers, and he needed to ensure no one else was pulled through as he had been. His investigation into dimensional anomalies was interrupted by a new crisis. The Burning Legion launched a coordinated assault on Azeroth's world tree, Nordrassil. This was not a probing attack, but a full invasion. Thousands of demons led by a pit lord whose power rivaled that of generals. The tree's destruction would devastate the Night Elves and potentially unmake much of Azeroth's natural defenses against corruption. Batman joined the defense, fighting alongside Night Elf sentinels, Tauren druids, and even some Horde warriors who recognized the threat, transcended faction loyalty. The battle was unlike anything he had experienced. Magic flew in every direction. Demons materialized from portals. Ancient treants tore demons apart with massive wooden limbs. It was chaos, but chaos he could work within. He identified the Pit Lord commanding the assault, Destructor, a being whose very presence caused the ground to crack and burn. The creature stood 30 feet tall, its skin like volcanic rock, wielding a blade that burned with field fire hot enough to melt stone. Around it, demons rallied, their assault gaining momentum. Batman knew he couldn't face such a creature directly. Even his most powerful explosives would barely scratch something of that scale and power. But he didn't need to fight it directly. He needed to disrupt its command, create chaos in the demon ranks, turn their organization against them. He moved through the battlefield like a shadow, targeting demon commanders. Each one he eliminated created a gap in the Legion's coordination. He sabotaged portals, causing them to destabilize and close prematurely, cutting off reinforcements. He used the terrain, collapsing trees onto concentrations of demons, redirecting rivers to sweep away ground forces. Destructor noticed the disruption to its forces and roared in fury. Its burning eyes swept the battlefield, searching for the source of interference. When it spotted Batman, it charged, each footfall shaking the earth. Batman ran, not in retreat but with purpose, leading the massive demon away from the main defensive lines and toward a prepared position. He had spent hours studying Nordressel's geography, understanding its magical ley lines and natural defenses. He led Destructor to a point where multiple ley lines converged, a place of concentrated natural magic. The Night Elf priestess Tyrande Whisperwind was waiting there, having trusted Batman's plan despite its audacity. As Destructor reached the convergence point, Tyrande and a circle of priests channeled a loon's power through the ley lines. The surge of natural magic was anathema to the demon's feel and nature. Destructor screamed, its form beginning to destabilize. Batman threw every remaining explosive he had, targeting the cracks forming in the Pit Lord's body. The combined assault of holy magic and precision explosives proved too much. Destructor's form ruptured, releasing a wave of feel energy that scarred the landscape but also destroyed hundreds of lesser demons in the blast radius. With their commander destroyed and their portals closed, the remaining demons broke and fled. The battle was won, though at terrible cost. Hundreds of defenders had fallen. Sections of the forest were permanently corrupted by fell energy. But Nordrassel stood, and the Legion's assault had been repelled. In the aftermath, as healers tended to the wounded and druids began the long work of cleansing the corruption, Tyrande approached Batman. The High Priestess of Elune regarded him with ancient eyes that had witnessed millennia of conflict. You fight with honor, Batman, despite wielding tools of destruction. You show respect for life, even in the midst of slaughter. These are rare qualities, but I sense great darkness in you as well. Pain and loss that drives you. What burdens do you carry from your world? Batman was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke, his voice rougher than usual. I watched my parents die when I was a child, murdered in front of me in a senseless act of violence. I swore that night that no one else would suffer as I had, that I would war against criminals and killers, that I would be what criminals feared. But every person I save is temporary. Crime continues. Villains escape or are released. The cycle never ends. I've been fighting for years, and Gotham still needs Batman. I'm not sure if I've made any real difference. Tyrande nodded slowly. The eternal struggle. We Night Elves understand this well. We have fought the Legion for 10,000 years. Countless lives sacrificed, and still they return. Yet we persist because the alternative is surrender, and that is unacceptable. You fight not because you will win permanently, but because fighting is the right action in itself. This is true heroism, not the glory of victory, but the determination to resist even in the face of endless struggle. Her words resonated with Batman in ways he hadn't expected. In Gotham, he was often seen as obsessed, driven by trauma rather than justice. Here, on a world where eternal vigilance against cosmic evil was the norm, his mindset was understood, even respected. But this moment of reflection was short-lived. Reports came of new rifts opening across Azeroth, but these were different from the Legion portals. They carried signatures similar to the one through which Batman had arrived. The Collector was making another move, and this time, the arrivals were not as benign. In the Barrens, a rift deposited a figure in green and purple. The Joker had arrived in Azeroth, and within hours, an entire Tauren village had been slaughtered, their faces frozen in rictus grins. In Tenaris, another rift brought Bane, who immediately began organizing the local criminal elements into a disciplined force. In Duskwood, Scarecrow's arrival was marked by terror spreading through settlements as fear toxin turned neighbors against each other. Batman received these reports with growing horror. His rogues gallery, the very villains he had fought for years, were being deposited across Azeroth. The Collector's experiment had taken a dark turn. These villains, with access to Azeroth's magic and technology, could cause devastation on a scale unimaginable in Gotham. He immediately began organizing a response, coordinating with both Alliance and Horde to track and contain these threats. The Joker was the highest priority. Batman knew from bitter experience that the Clown Prince of Crime would gravitate toward causing maximum chaos and suffering. In a world already torn by conflict, the Joker could trigger catastrophic escalations. Tracking the Joker across Azeroth proved challenging. The madman moved erratically, striking without pattern, his attacks designed purely to create terror and disorder. He poisoned water supplies in Silvermoon, causing elves to attack each other in fits of manic rage. He infiltrated Ironforge and nearly triggered a civil war by framing one dwarf clan for attacks on another. He found the conflicts of Azeroth endlessly amusing, often laughing that this world was already halfway to the chaos he enjoyed. Their confrontation finally came in Booty Bay, the pirate haven in Stranglethorn Vale. The Joker had taken over the town, turned its goblin and pirate inhabitants into his personal gang with a combination of toxins and his own twisted charisma. When Batman arrived, he found the town's center stage for one of the Joker's sick games. Captives from various races, Horde and Alliance, were chained in a circle around a massive bomb. The Joker stood in the center, his chalk-white face stretched in that horrible grin, wearing a bizarre outfit that mixed his traditional purple suit with looted pirate gear. Batsy, I was wondering when you'd show up. Welcome to your home away from home. The Joker's laughter echoed across the bay. Isn't it wonderful? A whole new world to play in. So many new toys, so many ways to make people scream. Though I gotta say, these orcs are tough customers. Not nearly as fun to break as Gotham socialites. Let them go, Joker. This is between us. Between us? Oh, bats. When has it ever been just between us? That's not how our relationship works. You need innocence to save. I need innocence to endanger. And together we make beautiful, violent music. The Joker danced around the bomb, his movements erratic. But here's the twist. Just like old times, this bomb is on a timer. You've got 5 minutes to free all these lovely people and get them clear of the blast radius. Or you can spend those 5 minutes fighting me, finally ending our dance permanently. What's it gonna be, Bats? Save the innocents or stop the villain? It was a classic Joker scenario, forcing an impossible choice. But Batman had learned over years of fighting this madman. The Joker's games always had a third option, one that required seeing past the false binary he presented. Batman moved, but not toward the Joker or the captives. He went for the bomb itself. The Joker's face showed genuine surprise as Batman began disarming the device with practiced efficiency. Hey, that's cheating. You're supposed to agonize over the moral choice. You always talk too much, Joker. Gave me time to analyze your device while you monologued. Standard Joker bomb. Probably components you stole from goblins here. Timer mechanism identical to the one you used in the Ace chemical incident. I've disarmed 100 of these. The Joker's grin widened, taking on a manic edge. Oh, but Bats, you're forgetting something important. We're not in Gotham anymore. He pulled a lever, and the bomb's casing split open, revealing not explosives, but a swirling portal of chaotic energy. Void tendrils emerged, reaching for the captives. Batman's blood ran cold. The Joker had found a way to combine his madness with Azeroth's cosmic horrors. The tendrils were similar to old god corruption, but twisted through the Joker's unique insanity. They didn't just corrupt, they induced a state of manic chaos that turned victims into extensions of the Joker's madness. Moving on pure instinct, Batman threw himself between the tendrils and the captives. The void energy hit him directly, and he felt it trying to worm into his mind. Whispers of madness, laughter that echoed through dimensions, visions of Gotham burning while he danced among the flames. But Batman's mind was a fortress, built through years of training and reinforced by countless battles against mind-altering effects. He pushed back against the corruption, compartmentalizing it, isolating it, refusing to let it touch his core identity. Through force of will alone, he held the void at bay long enough to finish disabling the portal device. The tendrils dissipated, and the captives were spared. But Batman staggered, feeling the corruption now pulsing within him. Not as severe as the chaos taint from fighting demons, but present nonetheless. A piece of the Joker's madness now resided in his mind, whispering, giggling, trying to erode his certainty. The Joker watched with fascination. Wow, you actually took a hit meant for them. That's so predictably you, Bats. But here's the fun part. You're infected now. My special blend of local void corruption and imported insanity. Wonder how long before you start seeing the humor in all this violence. Before you realize that order and chaos are just different flavors of the same cosmic joke. Batman's fist connected with the Joker's jaw, a blow that sent the madman sprawling. I've resisted you for years. A little void corruption won't change that. But even as he said it, he felt the truth of his situation. He was now fighting on multiple fronts. External threats to Azeroth, and internal corruption trying to break him from within. The Joker was captured, contained within a specialized cell designed by Batman, and reinforced with magical wards by Jaina and the Kirin Tor. But even imprisoned, the Clown Prince of Crime had achieved a victory. Batman was compromised, infected with a combination of void and madness that no one fully understood how to treat. As days passed, Batman continued his work, but with increasing difficulty. The corruption spread slowly, creating moments where he questioned his own methods, where violence seemed more appealing than restraint, where the line between justice and vengeance blurred. He found himself having thoughts that weren't entirely his own, impulses toward cruelty that he had to actively suppress. He sought help from every source available. Priests of the Holy Light attempted purification rituals, but the corruption was too entangled with his consciousness. Druids tried natural healing, which slowed the spread but couldn't remove it. Even the shamans of the Earthen Ring admitted they had never seen corruption that mixed external void influence with internal psychological trauma so seamlessly. Anduin, seeing Batman struggle, made a suggestion born of desperation. There's one place we haven't tried. One source of power that might be able to help, but it's dangerous, and I can't guarantee what will happen if you go there. Where? Batman asked, knowing he was running out of options. The Emerald Dream, the realm of nature itself, uncorrupted by void or fel, where reality exists in its purest form. If any place can burn away corruption at its root, it would be there. But entering the dream is perilous for those not trained in its ways. You could become lost, trapped in your own subconscious, or emerge changed in ways we can't predict. Batman didn't hesitate. Arrange it. The ritual to enter the Emerald Dream was conducted by Archdruid Malfurion Stormrage himself, the most powerful druid on Azeroth. Batman lay upon an altar in Moonglade, surrounded by druids channeling natural magic. As consciousness left his body, he felt himself slip into another state of existence. The Emerald Dream was everything and nothing like he expected. It was Azeroth, but pure, untouched, as the world would be without civilization's scars. Forests stretched endlessly, oceans sparkled with pristine clarity, mountains touched skies of impossible color. But it was also deeply personal, reflecting the consciousness of those who entered it. Batman walked through a forest that gradually shifted, becoming more familiar. The trees became buildings. The forest path became a street. He was in Gotham, but not his Gotham. This was Gotham as it could be, free of crime, with citizens walking safely at night, children playing in parks without fear. It was his dream, the goal he had fought for but never achieved. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" a voice asked. Batman turned to see himself, or rather, Bruce Wayne, as he might have been without trauma. Smiling, carefree, no shadows behind his eyes. "This is what you wanted, what you've always wanted. You can stay here, you know. In the dream, you can have the perfect Gotham. No more fighting, no more fear, just peace." Batman recognized this for what it was. a test, or perhaps a temptation. It's not real. Does that matter? In the dream, subjective reality is reality. If you believe it, experience it, it's as real as anything in the waking world. You've sacrificed so much for Gotham. Don't you deserve happiness? At the cost of abandoning the real world? Abandoning people who need help? That's not justice. That's escape. The dream Bruce's expression hardened. You self-righteous fool. You call it justice, but it's just your trauma weaponized. You can't save your parents, so you punish yourself by trying to save everyone else. You could have moved on, could have built a real life. Instead, you built a crusade that will never end because you won't let it end. You need the mission more than Gotham needs Batman. The words cut deeply because they echoed his own darkest doubts. But Batman had spent years in therapy with Leslie Tompkins, had confronted his motivations countless times. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am driven by trauma, but the help I provide is still real. The lives I save are still saved. My motivations don't invalidate the results. The dream shattered, reforming into a new scene. He stood in Crime Alley, the place his parents died, but the void corruption manifested here as well. The Joker's laughter echoed from every shadow. Tendrils of darkness emerged from the ground where his parents' blood had spilled. You carry me with you now. The Joker's voice surrounded him. Every doubt, every moment of anger, every impulse toward violence, I'm there amplifying it. You can't separate me from yourself anymore, Bats. I'm in your head rent-free. Batman closed his eyes, focusing on the techniques he had learned from meditation masters, from his time training in Nanda Parbat, from every mental discipline he had studied. You're not real. You're a manifestation of corruption trying to break me. I've faced hallucinations before. Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, Poison Ivy. This is just another version of the same attack. Oh, but I am real. The Joker's voice took on a more sinister tone. I'm the part of you that enjoys the fight, that feels satisfaction when you break a criminal's jaw, that gets a rush from danger. I'm the part you suppress, but I'm still you. And with my help, with the Void's help, that part can grow. You could be so much more effective if you just stopped holding back. The tendrils reached for him, and Batman didn't retreat. Instead, he walked forward into them, letting the corruption wash over him completely. He felt every doubt, every dark impulse, every violent urge he had ever suppressed. He acknowledged them, examined them, understood them as parts of himself that existed but didn't define him. You're right, he said to the darkness. These impulses exist in me. I've always known that. The capacity for violence, for cruelty, it's human. But capacity isn't destiny. I choose not to act on these impulses. That choice, made consciously every single time, is what defines me. Not the absence of darkness, but the constant decision to walk in the light despite it. The Emerald Dream responded to his acceptance and resolution. The corruption began to burn away, not by denial, but by integration. He didn't reject the darkness within himself. He acknowledged it and chose to transcend it. The Joker's laughter faded. The tendrils dissolved. The void corruption that had infected him was purged by his own will, reinforced by the dream's power. When Batman awoke in Moonglade, 3 days had passed. Malfurion stood over him, ancient eyes showing concern and respect. You survived. More than survived. You conquered the corruption through acceptance rather than rejection. Few have such strength of will. Batman sat up, feeling clear-minded for the first time since the Joker's attack. The corruption was gone, though the memory of it remained. He had learned something profound about himself and about the nature of corruption in this world. It could only truly be overcome by facing it directly, understanding it, and consciously choosing to be better than it. But while he had been healing in the dream, the situation on Azeroth had deteriorated. Bane had consolidated power in the Eastern Kingdoms, creating a militarized zone where he ruled through strength and fear. Scarecrow had corrupted large sections of Duskwood, turning it into a realm of nightmares. And worst of all, reports indicated that Lex Luthor had arrived and was working with the Burning Legion, offering them technological enhancements in exchange for power and knowledge. Batman mobilized every resource available. He coordinated Alliance and Horde forces in a series of surgical strikes against his rogues gallery. Each villain required different tactics. Bane was confronted through strategy rather than strength, his supply lines cut, his forces divided and defeated in detail. Scarecrow was countered with mass-produced filters designed by Batman and distributed to forces clearing Duskwood, his fear toxin rendered ineffective. But Luthor was the real threat. The man who had been Superman's greatest enemy had found in the Burning Legion a source of power that even Superman would struggle against. Luthor had always believed that humanity should rule through intellect and achievement, not depend on superpowered aliens. The Legion's offer of power in exchange for his genius was perfectly aligned with his worldview. The confrontation came at the Black Temple in Outland, where Luthor had established a laboratory to merge his world's technology with Legion Feltech. Batman infiltrated the facility, fighting through demons enhanced with Earth technology and security systems that anticipated his every tactic because Luthor knew how Batman thought. In the central laboratory, Luthor stood in powered armor that combined his own designs with Legion corruption. He looked like a war suit version of Superman, powered by feel energy instead of yellow sun radiation. Ah, Batman, I wondered when you would arrive. Tell me, how does it feel to be so thoroughly outclassed? You're just a man with gadgets, while I've become something more. You've become corrupted, Batman replied. The Legion is using you, Luthor. Everything they've given you comes with a price. A price I'm willing to pay for the power to reshape reality itself. On Earth, Superman held humanity back, made us dependent on him. Here, I can ensure that mortal achievement, not godlike power, determines the future. With the Legion's resources and my intellect, I'll create a new order where beings like you and I, who earned our power through effort and intelligence, rule over those who were simply born special. Batman recognized the delusion. Luthor had always resented Superman not just for his power, but for what that power represented. The idea that some beings were simply better through no effort of their own. But in selling his soul to the Legion for power, Luthor had become exactly what he claimed to hate. Someone who sought power they hadn't truly earned. You're not thinking clearly, Luthor. The feel corruption has already begun affecting your judgment. The Legion doesn't offer partnership. It offers slavery disguised as power. Luthor's response was to attack, his armored suit moving with speed and strength that rivaled metahumans. Batman dodged, analyzed, looked for weaknesses. The suit was impressive, but it had the same fundamental flaw all of Luthor's designs had: arrogance. Luthor always made his creations too dependent on his own control, too centralized. While evading Luthor's attacks, Batman deployed a series of electromagnetic pulse devices he had specifically designed after learning about Luthor's arrival. They wouldn't disable the suit completely. Its power source was too robust for that, but they would disrupt its control systems momentarily. In that moment of disruption, Batman struck with a specialized shaped charge placed precisely on the suit's power coupling. The explosion was carefully calculated to breach the armor without killing Luthor, venting the feel energy that powered the suit. Luthor staggered, his armor sparking and failing. Without its power, he was just a human, brilliant but not superhuman. Batman subdued him efficiently. "It's over, Luthor. Is it?" Luthor laughed, blood trickling from his mouth where he'd bitten his tongue in the impact. "You think capturing me changes anything? I've already shared my knowledge with the Legion. They have Earth technology now. They understand our tactics, our weapons, our weaknesses. You've won this battle but lost the war." Batman felt cold certainty settle over him. Luthor was right. By bringing Earth knowledge to the Legion, he had made them exponentially more dangerous. The demons now had insight into dimensional technology, Earth-style weapon systems, and tactical knowledge from a universe with entirely different physical laws. The implications were catastrophic. He secured Luthor and called for extraction, but his mind was already working on the larger problem. The Legion with Earth technology could threaten not just Azeroth, but potentially multiple realities. The Collector's experiment had spiraled out of control, introducing elements that destabilized everything. The revelation of this threat led to an unprecedented summit at the Argent Tournament grounds in Icecrown. Leaders from both Alliance and Horde assembled, along with representatives from neutral factions. Batman presented evidence of what Luthor had given the Legion, demonstrating through captured technology how much had been compromised. The Legion has always been a multiversal threat, he explained to the assembled leaders, but they've been limited to this reality's physics and magic. Now they have access to technology and knowledge from Earth, a universe with different fundamental laws. This makes them unpredictable and more dangerous than ever. Thrall, former war chief of the Horde and now world shaman, spoke gravely. What do you propose, Batman? How do we fight an enemy that now understands your world as well as ours? We need to do what you've been unwilling to do, truly unite. Not just temporary cooperation, but genuine alliance. A combined force that pools knowledge, resources, and capabilities from all of Azeroth's factions. And we need to go on the offensive. Stop reacting to Legion attacks and start striking at their sources of power. Sylvanas laughed coldly. Invade the twisting nether itself? That's suicide. The Legion has infinite numbers in their realm. Any force we sent would be overwhelmed. Not if we're strategic, Batman countered. The Legion operates through command structures. We've already seen that destroying their leaders disrupts their forces. I'm proposing a series of surgical strikes targeting their command, their resources, their infrastructure. Make them defend instead of attack. What followed was weeks of intense planning. Batman coordinated with military commanders from both factions, sharing his tactical knowledge while learning about Azeroth's specific capabilities. Strike teams were formed, combining the best of Alliance and Horde forces. Batman trained them in Earth-style special operations tactics adapted for magic and superhuman capabilities. The offensive began with simultaneous raids on Legion strongholds across multiple fronts. While the main armies engaged demon forces in traditional battles, Batman led small strike teams deep into enemy territory. They destroyed fell forges, assassinated demon commanders, and sabotaged portal networks. During one such mission, infiltrating a Legion command ship in the Nether, Batman found himself face to face with a familiar presence. A demon stood before him, but its face was recognizably Ra's al Ghul, or what Ra's had become after making some terrible bargain with the Legion. Detective. Ra's voice was corrupted but recognizable. I wondered if you would find your way here. You always were resourceful. Batman's mind reeled. Ra's al Ghul, his former mentor and enemy, apparently pulled into Azeroth just as he had been, but choosing a different path. What have you done, Raz? What I always intended. Achieve immortality and reshape the world according to my vision. The League of Assassins failed on Earth, but here, with the Legion's power, I can accomplish so much more. Azeroth is a world in constant conflict, constantly destroying itself. The Legion offers not destruction, but transformation. From chaos, we will forge a new order. You've been deceived. The Legion destroys worlds. It doesn't transform them. Everything they've told you is a lie, designed to use you. Raz smiled sadly, his corrupted face twisting the expression into something horrible. Perhaps you're still too limited in your thinking, too attached to conventional morality to see the larger picture. We are at an impasse, Detective, as we always have been. They fought, and it was like their battles on Earth but elevated to cosmic scale. Raz had maintained his martial skill, but enhanced it with demonic power. Batman countered with everything he had learned on Azeroth. incorporating techniques from monks, druids, and warriors into his fighting style. The battle was brutal and exhausting. Raz had strength and regeneration that Batman couldn't match directly. But Batman had something Raz had lost in his bargain with the Legion: clear purpose unclouded by corruption. Every move Raz made was slightly off, his judgment impaired by fell influence. Batman exploited these micro-failures, accumulating damage until Raz's defenses broke. "You could have been my heir, detective," Raz gasped as Batman stood over him, both of them bloodied and exhausted. "Together, we could have guided this world to greatness." "I don't guide people, Raz. I protect them. There's a difference." Batman left Raz bound for capture by the strike team, though he suspected the Immortal would find a way to escape eventually. Raz always did, but for now, another threat was contained. The offensive continued for months, slowly but steadily pushing the Legion back. Casualties were heavy on both sides, but for the first time, Azeroth's forces were winning not just battles but the overall strategic initiative. The demons found themselves on the defensive, forced to abandon strongholds and consolidate their forces. But victory came at a price. Batman pushed himself relentlessly, leading raid after raid, barely sleeping, treating every loss as a personal failure. Those who worked closely with him began to worry. Anduin tried to convince him to rest, but Batman brushed off concerns. There was always one more mission, one more threat, one more life that could be saved if he just worked harder. The breaking point came during a raid on a Legion fortress in Shadowmoon Valley. Batman's team walked into an ambush, carefully prepared by demons who had learned to anticipate his tactics. Half the team was killed in the initial assault. Batman fought with desperate intensity to save the survivors, pushing past exhaustion and injury. He succeeded in extracting the remaining team members, but barely. When they returned to base, Batman collapsed, his body finally overriding his will. He woke days later in Stormwind's medical wing, surrounded by concerned faces. "You're done," Jaina said firmly. "Your body has been pushed past human limits, even for someone with your training. The healers say you have stress fractures in multiple bones, muscle tears, organs on the verge of failure. You've been running on willpower and stimulants for weeks. This stops now." Batman tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. "The Legion will still be there after you recover," Anduin interrupted gently. "Batman, you've done more for Azeroth in these past months than anyone could have asked. You've united enemies, turned the tide of the war, inspired people across the world, but you're mortal. You have limits. Ignoring them doesn't make you more effective. It makes you a liability." The words stung because they were true. Batman had always prided himself on preparation and rational assessment, but he had let this war consume him. He had fallen into the same trap he had warned others about in Gotham, becoming so focused on the mission that he neglected the basics of health and sustainability. During his recovery, he had time to reflect. Azeroth had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. In Gotham, he had been singular, the protector whose methods and judgment defined his crusade. Here, he had to learn to work within larger structures, to trust others to carry out missions he would have preferred to handle personally, to accept that some battles would be lost despite his best efforts. He also came to understand something about this world that differed fundamentally from Earth. On Earth, Batman's presence as a peak human was exceptional. Here, on Azeroth, there were countless warriors with capabilities matching or exceeding his. What made him valuable wasn't his physical prowess or even his tactical genius, but his outsider perspective. He brought ideas and methods from an entirely different reality, combining them with Azeroth's own strengths in ways that created something new. As he recovered, he began training others in his methods, not to create copies of himself, but to share techniques that could be adapted. He taught SI-7 agents Earth-style infiltration tactics, He worked with gnomish engineers to incorporate some of his technology designs. He shared his investigative methods with both Alliance and Horde intelligence services. This legacy building proved more valuable than any individual mission he could have conducted. By multiplying his effectiveness through others, Batman achieved strategic impact that his lone crusader approach never could have managed. 6 months after his arrival on Azeroth, Batman stood once again in Stormwind's throne room, but this time for a very different reason. Representatives from across the world had gathered for a ceremony that had been years in the making, the formal signing of a unity accord between Alliance and Horde. It wasn't peace, not exactly. The two factions still maintained separate identities and leadership, but it was a commitment to cooperation against existential threats, a framework for resolving disputes without war, and a recognition that their common interests outweighed their differences. Batman's role in making this possible couldn't be overstated. His outsider status had allowed him to broker discussions that neither faction could have initiated on their own. His proven effectiveness against common enemies had demonstrated the value of unity, and his refusal to favor one side over the other had earned him trust from both. "This is your doing," Anduin said quietly as they watched the ceremony. "You showed us that cooperation was possible, even necessary." "I just showed what was already there," Batman replied. "The potential for unity existed. It just needed someone who wasn't invested in the old grudges to point it out." As the ceremony concluded, Batman felt the familiar sensation of dimensional displacement. The air around him began to shimmer with the same energy that had brought him to Azeroth. The Collector was calling him, though whether to send him home or to some other reality, he couldn't be sure. "It's time," he said to those gathered around him. "My presence here was always temporary." Reactions varied. Some were relieved to see the unsettling outsider depart. Others, like Anduin and Jaina, showed genuine sadness. Batman had become, if not a friend, then a respected ally whose counsel they valued. "Will you return to your Gotham?" Jaina asked. "I don't know. The Collector's motivations remain unclear, but wherever I end up, I'll do what I always do: protect people who need it." The dimensional rift opened fully, and Batman stepped through without hesitation. The last thing he heard from Azeroth was Anduin's voice. "Safe travels, Dark Knight. Your example will remain with us." The transit through dimensions was disorienting, reality folding in on itself in ways that defied comprehension. When Batman emerged, he found himself not in Gotham but in an entirely new location, a vast space that seemed to exist outside normal reality, filled with artifacts and objects from countless dimensions. And standing before him was the Collector, its form more defined now, revealing itself as something ancient and cosmic. "You've exceeded my expectations, Batman," the Collector said. "My experiment on Azeroth was to test whether mortal determination could alter the course of cosmic conflicts. You proved it could. The unity you helped create there will echo across that world's future." "Send me home," Batman demanded. "I've been your puppet long enough." "Puppet? No, you were never that. I merely arranged circumstances. Your choices, your actions, those were entirely your own. But you're right that it's time for resolution. I offer you the same choice I give all my successful experiments. Return to your origin world with memories intact, or continue to new realities where your unique perspective could make similar differences." Batman considered. Gotham needed him. It always would. But Azeroth had shown him that his methods, his approach, could have value in other contexts. How many worlds faced seemingly insurmountable threats that might be overcome with outside perspective? "If I agree to continue, I want guarantees. No more rogues from my world being pulled into dimensions where they can cause catastrophic harm. No more experimenting with lives. And I choose the missions." The Collector's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "You negotiate even from a position of weakness. Very well. I accept your terms. You will be my knight, moving between realities where cosmic deadlocks require mortal intervention. But know this, not every world can be saved. Not every mission will succeed. You will face losses that even your considerable will cannot prevent. I've always faced that. Gotham taught me that I can't save everyone, but I can try, and the trying matters. The Collector nodded. Then we have an accord. Go, Batman. Multiple realities await your particular form of justice. Before the transit began, Batman asked one final question. Why me? Out of all the heroes across dimensions, why choose someone who's just human? Because gods and demigods are predictable. They operate on scales and with powers that make them inflexible. But a human who has pushed past normal limits through will alone, who has stared into the abyss and refused to blink, who chooses justice over vengeance despite every reason to choose otherwise. That is rare across all realities. You are proof that divinity lies not in power, but in choice. That makes you invaluable. The dimensional rift swallowed Batman, carrying him toward unknown realities and new crusades. Behind him, Azeroth continued its eternal struggle, but now with unity forged in part by a dark knight from another world. The symbol of the bat, merged with Azeroth's own symbols of hope and justice, would fly over that world for generations, a reminder that even the most entrenched conflicts could be overcome with determination and perspective. In the space between dimensions, Batman reviewed what he had learned. Every reality had its own rules, its own physics, its own moral frameworks, but certain principles remained universal. Protect the innocent, stop those who would cause harm, refuse to become the monster you fight. These were not laws imposed by Cosmos, but choices made by individuals who refused to accept that might made right. Gotham would have to manage without him for now. Robin, Nightwing, Oracle, the entire Bat family he had trained would protect his city. They were ready. Perhaps had been ready for longer than he wanted to admit. His need to be Gotham's sole protector had been as much about his own psychology as about the city's actual needs. The realization brought a sort of peace. He had spent his adult life trying to prevent others from experiencing the trauma he had suffered. But in doing so, he had perhaps held too tightly to control, refusing to trust others to share his burden. Azeroth had taught him that distributed heroism, many individuals working together, could achieve what even the greatest lone crusader could not. The dimensional transit ended, depositing Batman in a new reality. He assessed his surroundings with practiced speed, medieval-level technology, but with evidence of magic, political banners suggesting multiple competing kingdoms, and in the distance, massive walls protecting what appeared to be a major city from threats beyond. He had work to do. Somewhere in this reality, people needed protecting. Somewhere, injustice flourished. And now, armed with experience from two worlds and unbreakable determination, Batman would do what he did best: bring hope to the hopeless and fear to those who preyed on the weak. The symbol on his chest, still carrying echoes of both Gotham and Azeroth, marked him as something unique. Not a god, not a demon, not even a traditional hero, just a man who refused to accept that evil was inevitable, that corruption was irresistible, that power justified any action. In the grim darkness of this new reality, a shadow moved with purpose. The Dark Knight had arrived, and he would make a difference. Not because of power or destiny, but because he chose to. And that choice, made constantly and consciously despite every hardship, was what truly defined heroism. Behind his cowl, Bruce Wayne allowed himself the faintest smile. Gotham had taught him to fight. Azeroth had taught him to unite. This new reality would teach him something else, and he would adapt as he always had. Because that was what Batman did. Assess, adapt, overcome. The crusade continued. The mission endured. And somewhere across the multiverse, in worlds known and unknown, the symbol of the bat would come to represent not just fear for criminals, but hope for victims. One man's impossible choice, made in a Gotham alley decades ago, would echo across realities, proof that even in the darkest places, Even against the most overwhelming odds, the choice to stand against evil mattered. This was Batman's truth, forged in tragedy, refined through countless battles, and now tested across multiple realities. Not the strongest hero, not the most powerful, but perhaps the most determined. And in a multiverse of cosmic powers and godlike beings, sometimes determination was the rarest and most valuable power of all.